Welcome to this edition of Cooking in Mr. Durazi's Kitchen. For today's class, we're talking about risotto. But what is risotto? Essentially, it's rice that's cooked in broth. But whether we're talking about a seafood risotto, maybe a mushroom risotto like this one, or a nice tomato risotto, or even a green sweet pea risotto, or even this squid ink risotto. Risotto is a creamy, comforting dish that is as elegant and complex as it is simple. Where does it come from? Risotto comes from Italy and was originally a peasant dish which has grown in reputation. Now, to make risotto, you do not just use any rice, but instead you want to use rice that is short to medium in grain size, plump, and has a high starch content. The most common rice used for risotto is arborio rice, which you can see here. Now, one thing for sure with risotto, it's all about process, time, and patience. Let's get started. To make our risotto, we're going to need approximately 2 tablespoons of olive oil, 2 tablespoons of butter, 3 tablespoons of minced onion, 5 tablespoons of white wine, 1.5 cups of arborio rice, 4 cups of hot chicken broth, 1 cup of grated Parmesan cheese. Now here we see our garlic and our onions, which have already been prepared. The onion, it's important to cut the onion in a size that's similar to the grain of rice so that when you cook it, it kind of melts into the rice, not something that's going to stand out. So at this point, our rice is nice and toasted. We're ready to go ahead and add our white wine. I'm going to pour that in, really hear that sizzle. And now from there, it's such a gratifying sound. You can go ahead and start to stir the rice. This is the first absorption that the rice is going to do. We're going to cook the alcohol out, right? So that heat is going to cook all the alcohol out of the wine and just leave us with really great flavor. Now, once all of the wine has been cooked out and evaporated, again, you're left with great flavor, but all of the alcohol has been cooked out. We're now ready to go ahead and add our first addition of hot stock. So the stock, which has already been heated, you want this hot when you start. We're going to go ahead and add our chicken stock. And once we add in the stock, add a little bit of seasoning, and then just start to mix. And this is a process now that's going to go on for a good half hour, where you're just going to continuously mix, breaking up the starches off of the rice. It's what's going to give the creaminess. So as the rice is absorbing the stock, at the same time, we're going to be developing the starches, taking them off of the rice and into the liquid, which is going to help to add to that creaminess. And there you can see the first batch of stock is evaporated, and you can kind of see it's already a little bit creamier. You can see it's actually starting to increase in size. All good stuff. Now, as far as the stock is concerned, we can use chicken stock. If you want to make this vegetarian, you can use a vegetable stock. You could make this with plain water. It just isn't going to have any really good flavor. If you were making a seafood risotto, you could use a seafood stock. Really, any kind of liquid would really work here. Chicken stock is just going to add some really, really great flavor, especially if you're using a fresh chicken stock, which we are in this case. So again, that constant stirring, the addition of the chicken stock, again, how much you need is really going to depend on just the heat, how fast it's absorbing. So you want to make sure you have enough. And you see I'm really scraping the bottom of the pan, stirring, making sure that nothing is sticking to the bottom. So here we see that was a grain of rice. If you looked in the middle, you'd notice that had a white part in the middle. That means that the rice is not yet fully cooked, and we'd want to continue. That was almost there, and you could do that throughout. Take a piece of rice, one grain, kind of bite into it, and you'll see if it's cooked or not. Want to be careful that you don't overcook the rice, because if you do overcook, it's just going to be kind of mushy. So you do want it to still have some bite to it. So here you can see we're just constantly stirring, making sure that it really is cooking all the way through. Nothing is sticking. Once it starts to stick, it'll start to brown. And you're not looking for that. For this particular risotto, this is a nice, basic, simple risotto. Want to make sure that it's nice and clean. Once you understand how to make this, from there, you can make any of the variations. So at this point, we're just about ready to go. You can see it's got some nice creaminess. We're going to add a little more seasoning. You're tasting as you go. Now we're going to go ahead and add in our Parmesan cheese. We're going to go ahead and add 2 tablespoons of butter for this amount of rice. And now we're going to just start to mix the cheese and the rice and really kind of fold them into each other. This is where now we're really going to build that absolute creaminess, right? The butter should be cold when it goes in, right? Cold butter is going to help to make for a creamier finished product. If the butter is not cold, it'll melt quickly and just be oily. So you do want to make sure that the butter is cold when it goes into the rice at this point. Now, there are other things that you could add. You could add things like mascarpone cheese, which is a really nice Italian creamy cheese. You could add a little bit of heavy cream at the end, which would also help to add to the creaminess, but it's not really needed in this case. So we're going ahead and mixing everything in. I'm going to kind of look at it and see if I think it needs a little more liquid. You can go ahead and add some stock. Right? Or if you feel like it's a little bit loose, you just cook it a little bit longer and evaporate any of that excess liquid out. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and just going to add a touch more stock, just a little bit, just to kind of make sure that it's really as creamy as I want it to be. Again, really getting the sides, making sure that the pan is nice and neat, and you can just see the difference in the creaminess in that right now. And that's just about ready to go to plate. So here we have our finished product all plated. Add a little bit of fresh herbs and wait, what's that? As promised, today I have a bonus recipe for you. I'm going to show you how to make a quote-unquote risotto using farro instead of rice. So farro is a grain, just a little bit of a healthier version. To start, you want to pick up a store-bought farro. You want to follow the directions on the package for washing and cooking. So for this particular farro, the cooking process was pretty simple. About 30 minutes in a boiling liquid like you see here and using chicken stock. Making the farro risotto is going to be a little bit different than making the risotto with the arborio. After the farro is completely cooked, you're going to strain it, and then in the pot that you cook the farro, start with your butter and oil, and then saute your onions as you would while making the risotto, sweating them slowly as to not brown. Here, if you get a little color, it's not going to be as bad. Once they're cooked all the way through and translucent, add in your garlic and continue to stir for just a few more seconds. Now we're going to take the cooked farro and add it back into the pot. Stir to make sure that all of the farro is coated with the oil and the butter, getting the onions submerged all the way throughout. At this point, we're going to add a little bit of the hot chicken stock just to start to get it moist and creamy. Now we can go ahead and add in our butter and our cheese, using our Parmesan cheese. And you can see as we stir that it starts to take on a very similar creamy consistency as the risotto. Now, if you need to, you can add a little more stock or a little bit more broth, whatever you're using. Stir it all the way through, and there you have your finished product. Go ahead and season with a little salt and pepper. The grains will go from the uncooked to the cooked. You can see the difference. And there is our farro risotto. I hope that you've enjoyed this journey through risotto. Hope that you'll try and make some on your own because it's delicious and really worthwhile. Hope you enjoyed. Hey, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to see more content.